A lot of people get, especially students and graduates, very confused about how to get job offers. So what I wanted to do today is just break a job offer down. What does it take to get a job offer into really simple factors that you can look at and you can focus on. And it will help you figure out where might I be falling short in the job search and what might I need to do to go and get one. So it will help you perform sort of a root cause analysis of your job search. So here's the thing, to get job offers, the most important thing that matters is to get interviews. Because if you're not getting interviews, you can't possibly get an offer. No one is going to come and send you a message or an email and say, hey, here's a job offer for you. They're always going to want to interview you first, right? At least one interview. And it's going to be probably over a video call or it's going to be in person. So you've got to have interviews. But it's not just about interviews, it's about having enough interviews. So we can call this number of interviews. So the more interviews you have, the more job offers you're going to get. But the other thing is the quality of your interviews. Because you can have 100 interviews. If they're low quality, you're still not going to get an offer. So you've got to have both. You've got to have enough interviews, then you've got to have quality interviews. They're the two things you need to get job offers. It's quite simple when you break it down. So if you're looking at, I haven't got any job offers yet, you can use this issue tree to figure out where might I be falling short. So if you haven't had any interviews yet, then this is obviously the issue because you haven't even had the chance to showcase your quality yet. It's all about number of interviews, right? So if the number of interviews is extremely high, like you've had 100 interviews and no offers, the number of interviews isn't the issue. It's going to be the quality of interviews. Okay? And just as a rough ballpark, if you want to guarantee a job offer, I would aim to get 10 interviews. The reason is because I've helped a lot of people get jobs. 99% of people that I've seen have landed a job offer well before their 10th interview. Usually it might take like 3 interviews, maybe 4 interviews, and pretty much everyone will land it by then. Now, how do you ensure that you have enough interviews? There are 2 types of interviews. We've got what we call informal interviews or informational interviews, you could call them. And then we've got what we can call formal interviews. Let's go with formal first, because everyone knows that. Formal interviews are where there is a job opportunity available at the company, and there's going to be like a recruiter or a talent acquisition specialist or an HR manager or a hiring manager from within the team, like the head of the team that you want to join or the manager of the team or even sometimes junior people of the team. They're going to do interviews with you to assess whether you're a good fit. They might do 1, 2, 3. Some companies do a lot of interviews. And then from that, they're going to make a decision about whether or not they hire you based on the quality of the interviews. Obviously, there are some things that are outside of your control here, like the competition and things like that, but we won't go too much into that. So that's a formal interview. Typically, the way you get formal interviews is going to be through the number of job applications. I think that's probably an easy way to break it down. And then it's going to be the quality of job applications, typically. If you submit one application that's really high quality, you might get an interview, but the chance is pretty low. But if you submit 1,000 applications, even if the quality is pretty low, you should still get at least one interview, right? I mean, that just because of how numbers work. The more you do of something, even if the probability is low, the more likely it will occur. As long as the probability is not 0, then it doesn't matter how many you do. But assuming you've got some level of quality in your application, you ramp up the number and you get results. Alternatively, you can do a small number of applications. You could do 10 applications with exceptionally high quality and you should get some interviews. So that's what we would call formal interviews. The other way of getting job offers though is through informal interviews. So what are informal interviews? These are conversations with people at your target company, ideally decision makers, so people who are hiring managers there. They would be your manager or your manager's manager if you joined that company. So they're going to assess whether you're a good fit and whether or not there's a job opportunity doesn't matter so much. You're still going to be able to build a rapport with that person, build a relationship with that person. And if there is an opportunity that might come up, you're going to be as long as you sell yourself well as a great candidate, you're going to be in the running and there's a good chance you can get it. They might even reach out to you for that job without even going out to the market, for example. Through informal interviews, you can also create job opportunities if you pitch yourself well. I mean, companies are often looking for top quality talent. They might not need it to keep the business running, but if someone comes in who's an exceptional talent, some companies will just say, hey, let's hire them. And you can kind of create jobs through that process as well. And one important thing to note here is that sometimes these informal interviews, they can lead directly to job offers, but sometimes also they can lead to formal interviews. So it might kind of go informal interview, then they refer you to a formal interview after that. But all else equal, if you have more formal interviews and more informal interviews, that'll increase the total number of interviews, which will increase the number of job offers that you get. And in my experience, these are just as valuable as each other. If you have, say, 10 informal coffee catch-ups with managers at your target company, that, in my experience, having helped a lot of people, is just as valuable as having formal interviews. I would argue that if you can have maybe 5 informal interviews I'd be pretty confident you'd get a job offer. If you'd have only 5 informal interviews, I think that'd be less likely. I think you'd probably need more, around 10 of these, something like that. So how do you get informal interviews? This is where it gets a little bit confusing, but I'm going to try and keep it really simple. One of the best ways is to send cold emails and LinkedIn messages. And the other thing that we have here, and which I should probably have also included in this one, is the follow-up process, and I'll also include that here. So let me briefly explain it for formal interviews first. So with formal interviews, even if you do a lot of applications and your quality is really good, there is a chance that your efficiency here isn't as good as it could be. Maybe you convert 1 in 10 job applications into an interview. If you implement a follow-up process, which is also a key driver here of formal interviews, then you can increase substantially your success rate here. So what does this mean? For example, if you apply to a job and you don't hear back, okay, you would follow up with that person, and potentially multiple times, to show that you are really interested. So that's quite important here. It goes the same for informal interviews. So how do you get informal interviews? One of the best ways is to just email and LinkedIn message people. There's lots of other ways. You can cold call people, you can walk into a company and you can just say hello directly. But in the end, we live in a digital world, so emailing and messaging people is usually the best way to get in contact. So if you want to get an informal interview with someone at one of your target companies, you're going to be connecting with them on LinkedIn, sending messages, sending cold emails. And if you do this really well, you can build rapport with this person over LinkedIn or email. And then you can earn from that the opportunity to have an informal chat with them, basically. And typically the way we do this is we build rapport first, we catch their attention first, and then we ask for the opportunity to have a chat. So that is one of the best ways to get these opportunities. And the other thing, which I probably should mention here as well, in this day and age, if you optimize your LinkedIn profile really nicely, you'll actually get people reaching out to you to chat. So they'll reach out and you don't even have to message them. They'll say, hey, I saw you were wanting this role, you have this experience, I'd love to chat with you about this opportunity. And that could kind of get you into an informal interview. It could also honestly get you into a formal interview, but I'll keep it under here for now. So these are the main things to focus on, right? So how do you use this diagram? Well, you go through and you can see what is what is driving this job offer? What are the things you can actually focus on? What levers can you pull to affect this variable? So we know the number of interviews and quality is important. So how do we increase the number? Well, we've got to get more of these interviews. How do we get formal interviews? Well, we have to have quality applications. We have to make sure we're doing enough applications. We have to have a follow-up process. With informal interviews, we have to send cold emails and LinkedIn messages. We have to optimize our LinkedIn and we have to follow up as well. We have to have a process for that, right? So you can see it kind of helps us visualize what we need to do to get an offer, and also to identify where we're falling short. And there are so many other things included within this, but I just want to give you like a high level thing so you can, it's very easy to visualize. I'm going to break it down a little bit more here. Number of job applications, that's pretty easy. I think, I don't have to break that down too much more, but you can find job applications by looking at company websites that you like, by looking at the common job boards, going into specific like group chats and Facebook groups or Slack groups and things, LinkedIn groups for your industry where they post unique jobs, all those sorts of things, through your university. Okay, when it comes to the quality of applications, the main thing here is your resume, potentially a cover letter if one is asked for. And another thing I think which is important is having a personal note. If you want to stand out when you're applying for a job, yes, your application, your resume, your cover letter, and also like any application form you fill in, they have to be super high quality. But if there's 10 people who are really high quality, then you're not going to stand out. So how do you stand out? That's when you actually send personal notes. You reach out to the team directly and you prove to them how important this opportunity is for you and how much you want it. So that helps you set yourself apart. And ideally, if you really want to do well in this process, you start actually doing informal interviews with the companies as well. Because if you already know people at the company, then you go and apply, your application is going to be 10 times stronger because you're probably going to get a referral for the job. You can mention the people in the cover letter. You can send personal notes to the people and let them know who you've talked to, who you were referred by. So that's all going to enhance your results. Another thing here, which I'll put as separate, is tailoring. So it's totally fine if you have a base resume and cover letter and whatnot, and you want to send that through for a job application, a job advert, but if you tailor it a little bit to the specific requirements, then you're going to have a much better chance. So if someone's looking, say, just as a silly example, David wants to eat sushi, salmon sushi for lunch, and Bob comes along and he tries to sell, chicken sushi or something like that. It's not going to be as interesting, right? They still might eat it, but they're not going to be as sold. Whereas if someone comes along and says, hey, do you want salmon sushi? They're going to be much more interested in buying it and eating it, right? So it's the same thing with jobs. If someone's looking for skills and experience with SQL, you want to focus on how you can help them with SQL, not on the million other things that they don't care about. It's the same thing. So tailoring is really important. And the other thing that I should really mention here is the skill and experience fit. That's really important. So you could have obviously the best resume ever, best cover letter ever, talk to everyone in the team, you could tailor an application form, but if you are not an actual good fit for that job, or you're not competitive, so say for example there are 200 applicants for a job and you're not kind of in the top 10 in terms of skills and experience, I think it's going to be quite hard to convince them to give you an offer, even if you're amazing at everything else, like you're great at interviews and you're great at all this stuff, right? So you've got to have a balance of these things. So they're the main drivers here of quality job applications. If you do these things well and you get these things right, you'll have a high quality job application. Then if you do that with a high number of applications and you do the follow-up, you're going to get lots of formal interviews. It's really straightforward. And I won't go too much deeper than this because I think it will get too confusing, but that's the high level. When it comes to informal interviews, we've got three main things here. The messaging, basically messaging and emailing people to build rapport, get to know them, and then trying to progress it to an informal interview or an informational interview. You have to have the optimized LinkedIn, and then you have the follow-up process. If you do these things well, you're going to get results. So cold emails and LinkedIn messages. Obviously, there's two things here. We could say the number of emails and messages, and then we're going to have the quality of emails and messages. And very similar to up here, okay, you want to make sure that in terms of the quality, the message, there's a million things. I won't go into the detail here, but it has to be the right person. So you've got the target, the person or the recipient, and then you've got the quality of the message. There's two main things here, right? In fact, yeah, we'll leave it at that for now. I won't go into too much detail, but if you've got really quality messages and you're sending them to the right people, good quality, and you send enough of them, you're going to get lots of responses, and your cold email and messages, they're going to work really nicely. In fact, I should bring this back here. That makes more sense. There we go. So we need to increase the number, increase the quality, optimize the LinkedIn, follow up. If we do these things really well, we're going to get lots of informal interviews. Hands down, like it has to happen. Okay, so if you are not getting if you're not getting interviews, look at this root cause kind of analysis, this issue tree, and look at where could you be going wrong. Because because you're not getting a lot of feedback when you're trying to get interviews, you're applying to jobs, it's really hard to figure this stuff out, right? So maybe go through and just go, okay, do I know my resume is top notch? Do I know it definitely is working? Okay, if you've got it approved by someone who definitely knows their stuff, okay, they've got experience, it's probably a good resume. And don't try not to mess with the variables too much as well here, because once something's good quality, it's approved, and people who know their stuff have said it's good, don't mess with it too much, because you then have to try and test stuff. Okay, you then have to conduct sample tests. If you do 20 applications following this process, what results do you get? Kind of thing. Same with the cover letters, application forms, blah blah blah. So make sure you're doing all of these things well, and then you ramp up the number. Okay, so just to give you a rough idea, right? If you are sending 100 applications and getting no interviews, that means the quality and the follow-up is wrong. In fact, I could even just say the quality is wrong. And you know what? I'm going to actually put follow-up underneath quality, because I think that's part of a quality application here. So if you're doing 100 and nothing's working out, it's the quality. So this is your issue here. One of these things. You have to figure out what it is, fix it. Then same with cold messages. If you send 1,000 cold emails and you got no responses, the issue is with the quality of the messages. And it could potentially also be to do with your LinkedIn profile, because it's not, for some reason it's turning people away. Because that can be true. Even if you have a great message and you send a good number, if the LinkedIn profile is looking dodgy, your response rate is going to be very low. On the other hand, if you've sent 10 job applications and you've got 2 interviews, that's actually not too bad, given the circumstances. And if you do 30 applications, you're probably going to get 6 interviews, and that's plenty to get an offer. Same with this. If you're sending 20 cold emails and getting 10 responses off that, that's really good. And if you can convert those 10 responses into 3 informal interviews, that's fantastic. That means you can go and send 60 cold messages, and you can go and get 9 to 10 informal interviews. And if you're getting 5 formal interviews, you're probably getting an offer, as long as your quality is good, obviously. And if you're doing, say, 5 or 10 informal interviews, you're probably getting an offer too, in my experience. Although you have to be very smart and tactful about how you approach these interviews. You can't just chill your way through it. And then we come to the quality of interviews, right? So if you're doing, say you got 5 interviews and you haven't got an offer, I wouldn't worry too much. But most people usually get an offer by this point, at least our clients. If you have had 10 interviews and you've got no offers, start looking at the quality of interviews. That's probably the issue here. Because 10 is plenty of interviews to get an offer, in my opinion. And the quality of interviews, I won't break that down, but that's fairly straightforward. It's presentation, it's how do you actually communicate your answers, following up, thanking them, all the little tricks and stuff, but I won't go into that because I think people probably understand this a bit more. This is the trickier bit a lot of people don't get. So yeah, that's kind of the breakdown, in my opinion. That's what we've seen. We've helped people get around 500 offers now, which is pretty cool. At a lot of good companies. If you have any questions on this or you disagree with any of this, I'd love for someone to to point that out, because I'm always looking to refine my understanding of this process so that we can make less assumptions and get better results for clients. Thanks for your time and enjoy. Have a good day.